Hello and welcome to Heather's Kitchen Sink. My name is Heather Bischoff and I created this space as a place for people to drop their feelings essentially and sort them. And how this came about was I got diagnosed with cancer and had so many emotions coming up and I just needed a place to sort them, and the kitchen sink is kind of that place. Today I wanted to just talk about a couple things that maybe you resonate with. If you do, I would love to hear your story. But one of the things, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania on the border of New Jersey in the Poconos, and there was a lot of religion in my family growing up. And so I was always taught to be the good girl. And part of being the good girl also meant being invisible, and that I just had to swallow what I was feeling. My feelings actually didn't really matter. No one ever asked me as I was growing up, like, how do you feel about this, Heather? And again, if you can relate to this, I would love to hear your story. But I can remember as a kid, we grew up in a very Baptist household, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but the reason I'm sharing that is to help you understand the context of what I grew up in. And so, one of the things, like, my parents never drank, they didn't smoke. I can remember as a child driving to the church, and we would drive past a bar, and my mom would say, look in there, like, those people are going to hell. And my dad would mow the church lawn. And I mean, it was just like, we were just like, eating it. And then when I was probably about 11 years old, I remember my dad walking down the sidewalk in a white t-shirt with a pack of cigarettes in the sleeve of his t-shirt and a 6-pack of beer. My entire life completely shifted. We were, it was like, before that, it was, you can't listen to certain music, you can't watch certain things, you can't say certain things. I mean, it was so controlled and rigid. And then all of a sudden, everything was blown open at this point in my life where I was going through puberty and starting to, like, experiment with different things. And my parents literally went off the rails, and everything that I was taught up to that point was completely gone. And that is just really messes with a person's head. Road, and I mean, this was my choice, but I always just felt so responsible for my brother. I have a brother who's a year younger than me, and so I immediately was like, I have to protect my brother. But again, I had to be the good girl. I had to not cause a scene, not make a fuss, respect my elders, and there was never any space for me to be seen or heard, which is really hard. Then, fast forward, I get into a marriage, and I'm just thinking all of these things are the norm, that my feelings, like, don't matter, essentially. So when something doesn't sit right with me, I'm just supposed to accept it, essentially. And I did that for a really, really long time, and I didn't even know that it wasn't normal because it's what I grew up with. Have you ever had a situation like that where you really just didn't know that something wasn't normal because it is your normal? I would love to hear about it. You can put it in the comments. And if you like this channel, I would love for you to subscribe. I would love for you to just share this. And again, I would genuinely love to hear your experiences and your stories, because this is the stuff that we're all in this together, and we all can help each other. And it's just so fascinating to me because I grew up in this religious bubble, and it's, I went from my parents' home to my husband's home, and I was there for, 20 some years. And then all of a sudden in my 40s, I was taking care of myself for the first time. And not, like, I remember, like, buying my first car. I had no idea. Like, I literally had no idea what I could afford, what I could do. I felt like I was being a bad girl, quite honestly, because I was like, I've never done anything like this. I bought a stick shift, and I mean, I just did all the things that I feel like he would have never let me do, because not that he was this horrible, horrible person, but again, I always felt like I needed to just, everything was always about him. Growing up, everything was always about my parents. Nothing was ever about me. And the downside of that is, it took me a really long time to figure out who I was. And while my life imploding and all the things that happened and, probably from 2013 to 2018, just really allowed me to wake up and start to really figure out who I am and what I want and what I don't want. And it's so important because when you grow up in this religious bubble, sometimes you're not given the opportunity to really explore those things about what you do like and what you don't like. And constantly, I mean, for me, I was constantly told, you can't do this and you can't do that. And if you do this, this is wrong, or this is promiscuous, or, you shouldn't be asking those questions. And I think those questions are important to ask. Whatever those questions are, I think questions are the way that we learn and expand and grow. And not asking questions, to me, is a really big red flag, because I'm not asking questions because I'm suspicious or I don't believe something. I'm asking questions because I want understanding, and I want to really be able to resonate and get what is being shared with me or said with me. So growing up in that religious bubble, I just carried those traditions on essentially in my marriage, because I had no idea that there could be another way. And now, having 10 years essentially to figure out who I am, to rebuild a life that I love, and to just take care of myself financially, take care of myself emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of those things. Like, it's really empowering. And if someone would have told me, back when I turned 40, these are the things that are going to happen in your life. You're going to lose your job, which I had never lost a job. I got laid off. My position was eliminated, and I became an empty nester. My youngest graduated from high school. We moved into a new house. I was the only person that moved into the house. My daughter was supposed to move in, and she moved in with her boyfriend. My ex-husband was supposed to move in, and he was with his fiance. And so like all these things happened within 90 days. And so it really was a wake-up call, and I don't recommend it for anybody. It was really, really hard. And I almost didn't make it because it was just so much, because up until that point, our family was this picture perfect, go to church, we had the house, we had, all the things. We had the jobs, the cars, the, white picket fence, we were on the, the pond, blah, 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 all the things. And I mean, I was buying it too. I totally was buying it, because I thought this was our life. This is what we were creating, a home and a family for our children and our grandchildren and all those things. And that's not what happened. And if someone would have said, in 10 years, Heather, you're going to be living in California by yourself, fully supporting yourself in your own business and doing video, sharing your life with somebody, I would have told them there's absolutely no way any of that is going to happen, because I couldn't see the way forward. And so while I'm talking about like the religious, dogma essentially, and the control of all that stuff, I had to break away from it in order to get to where I am today. And I'm not saying that, religion is good or bad. I'm just saying that for me, religion felt very controlling, very limited. And I feel like part of my spiritual journey and what has gotten me here is that I've been able to really expand and ask questions and learn from different cultures and different practices and methodologies and all of those things, and would have never ever done that because, growing up where I grew up, it was like if you're looking at tarot or oracle cards or astrology or any of those things, like you're going to hell. And so according to those things, I'm definitely going to hell. But it's just like fascinating to me, because I feel so much more grounded where I am now, and just really excited to be living the life that I'm living. And I would love to hear from you if you've, had any of those types of experiences. And I can remember when I was in Indianapolis one night, this is really funny. I have a friend, her name is Julia, and we went to like this headbangers ball, and it's essentially like 80s rock bands. And we just had like the best time that night. And so we called an Uber, and on the way back, we got this Uber, and it was this minivan and a young kid driving it. So we were like, oh my God, he's definitely driving his mom's van, which was hilarious in itself. We were both definitely a little intoxicated, and he was playing all of these worship jams in the car, which we both knew because Julia was a former, pastor's wife. So we both understood, what that is like being in the church and being a woman in the church, and just how a lot of times our thoughts and ideas are minimized because in a lot of churches and a lot of religion, the woman's role is to be at home with the kids, to be submissive, to not really have ideas or thoughts. And so even though we're both extremely intelligent and successful women, that's just kind of what we had to deal with in those environments. And you don't say anything because it's part of the culture. You just don't say anything. And so we're like, this guy's taking us home, and she's like, let's stop. And so we got a pack of Virginia Slims because, why not? We're having fun, right? And just belting out these songs. And it was just hilarious because I think from his perspective, again, it goes back to that religious thing. I think he was really surprised that women can have a great time and have fun and also have a heart for, a higher power or a higher calling and know these worship songs. And so it's just really interesting and kind of funny because I feel like it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think it can be both. Why does it have to be option A or B? Why can't it be option C, where we get to enjoy life, everything in moderation? So I think if you're feeling this, if you've experienced this, this is my story and how I've kind of overcome. And like I said, this has been a journey that has really been over 10 years, but the last 10 years specifically, I've really done a lot of work. And while it's not something that I probably would have chosen for myself, I wouldn't change it at all because I had the time being alone, being single, learning so many of life's lessons in a condensed period of time has really been honestly very magical for me because I'm glad that I got to question things, and I'm glad that I had the experiences that I had because, putting things through the lens of religion, it really is very limiting and it makes your world really small, or at least that's my experience. And so, by being able to kind of step away from that for a while and really kind of see what is out there, and it's kind of like living in the world and not of the world type of thing. And so, again, I feel like you can really be present to who you are, to your soul, to your spirit. And it doesn't mean that you have to be locked into one particular practice of religion or whatever. Like spirituality to me is really expansive. And it's like, I could go really, really deep on this, but I'm grateful for where I am and where I've come. And again, I would love to hear your story because I know that there are a lot of people who do struggle with this because there's so much guilt that comes with this because, especially when you're told to be a good girl and you do things that you're told are what bad girls do, you feel a lot of guilt, you feel a lot of shame because you're not, doing the thing that the good girl says to do. You're not pushing things down, you're not being silent. But I've learned that, not being silent is really an act of love, and most religion is actually about love and loving people and being kind. And I feel like setting those boundaries and speaking up I'm not saying to speak up in a disrespectful or rude or unkind way, but I think it's important that we use our voice. And it took me a really long time to understand, one, that I had a voice, two, that my feelings didn't need to be validated by anybody else. My feelings are my feelings, and I'm allowed to have them. I'm allowed to process them. And I don't need permission to do that. I don't need someone to tell me it's okay to do that, or that they even need to understand how I feel, because my feelings are mine, and which means they're also my responsibility. Because I think when you grow up in that religious bubble, it's very easy to think like, oh, well, my partner needs to take on all of that too. They need to make me happy. They need to make me feel safe. They need to make me feel all these things. And what I've learned is that happiness comes from me. Safety comes from me. My emotional groundedness comes from me. And it's no one else's responsibility, nor would I want to give that responsibility to anybody else, because I don't want that responsibility of holding that for anybody else. And so when we learn to kind of sit with ourselves and really start questioning, why do I believe what I believe? And, where did this come from? Is this really mine? Is this something that I really believe in? Or is this something I was told to believe? Because I think when you start asking those questions, you'd be really, it'd be interesting to see what it is that you what comes up for you. And for a lot of people, religion is a way of expressing themselves. It's a place for community. It's a place for, a lot of happy things. And I think that's wonderful. And there's a place for that. But if you're a person that's feeling like, I'm not really sure if I'm aligned with this anymore, I think it's okay to question that. It's okay to start asking questions and to dig into things and doing some research. And again, everything in moderation. What makes sense to you? What feels aligned in, with who you are. Thanks again for being here. I hope that you've enjoyed this rant. I'd love to hear about your experiences and what has worked for you, what you're struggling with. And, if you like this video, if it resonates with you, please share it, please subscribe. I'm just new at this, I'm just getting started, and I just appreciate your support. And I just hope that you have a great rest of your day.